Hello Internet, I have a very interesting video to bring to you today. I recently interviewed the co-founder and good friend of mine, Wes, who has spent the majority of his adult life, 10 years actually, since graduating college, living in Southeast Asia. And we had a long talk about what it's like to move back to the US after living abroad for 10 years. Check it out. Hi Wes, how are you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks. How are you?
I'm well. How are things going for you and your family in the US?
Yeah, I think things are pretty unique, man. It's been a journey. We've been here a year and a half. We had our first child. Coronavirus hit. There are protests in the street. So it's been a unique journey for sure.
Sure. Well, we can delve into some of this a bit more, but you've been back about a year and a half now. What are some of the biggest challenges or difficulties about moving back to the US?
Immigration is not easy for my wife. That was a challenge. Navigating health insurance in America was a challenge. Reassimilation was surprisingly hard, a lot harder than I expected it to be. I was gone for a long time, so coming back here and trying to have normal conversations with Americans was challenging. People don't want to hear that any is better than it is in America. More specifically, people don't want to hear that anything in China could possibly be better than anything in America. And so I had to learn how to not say things like that. It's weird.
Now, your wife is a Chinese citizen, and you guys recently got a green card. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
We hired an attorney for that. There's lots of paperwork. There's an interview process. I showed up to the interview with all kinds of documentation in manila folders, just ready to go. So when they would ask, for example, like, hey, when did you guys meet? I would be like, oh, we met in October 2012 in Shenzhen. Here's a manila folder with photos from our first 3 months together in 2012 without them even asking. So and I did that for everything. So like, do you have a job? Yeah, here's my contract in a manila folder, do you have, like everything. Do you have bank statements, or like what's your income and how much money do you have saved? Here's a manila folder with all my bank statements. Like, just for everything, just had it all ready to go. And that process, that interview went really smooth. That was cool. And then everything went through, and I got home and I was celebrating with a couple beers and making phone calls to like family and friends, letting them know interview went really well. And then the officer called me and said, hey, did you take those documents back with you? And I said, no, I left everything there. But let me check what I do have back here. I said, no, I don't have that, what you're looking for. And she was like, are you sure? Because I don't have it. And then oh, here it is. Like, what? You're the person in charge of my wife being able to legally stay here, and it's been less than an hour, and you've already lost stuff. And so that was kind of shocking. And then so like that was all good then, because she had found it, and it was a sigh of relief. And then they sent the green card to the wrong address twice. Despite me filling out the proper paperwork, and they sent it to an address we never lived at. So they sent documents to the correct address saying, things have been approved and you can expect to have things in hand within X amount of days. And so like they had the correct address on file, but when it came to the most important document of all the documents, the green card, they sent it to the wrong address twice. And then to get it resent is it can take up to 150 days. So yeah, man. So it was really stressful. If I'm being honest, it took a lot of my time, but I'm just grateful that it's done. You know, I'm just happy to have that part behind us.
And speaking of your wife, she's a Chinese citizen. What do you think has been the most difficult or challenging for her to relocate to the U.S.?
We live in an area that doesn't have public transit. And this might not be the most challenging thing, but it's definitely up there. So she's never needed to drive. We were always living in Shenzhen, and when we visited Hong Kong or when we were in Thailand, she could drive like a motorbike there. Or Hong Kong use the public transit there, and like getting around was never a problem, a total non-issue. But here, where we live in the Midwest. You need a vehicle. Like there's very little ways to get around that, and so now having a child, like Uber isn't even really an option because you're gonna go. Say we wanted to go see a sporting event, right? Pre-COVID, right? We wanted to go see a sporting event. I want to have a couple of drinks, so I don't want to drive. She can't drive. Well, let's take an Uber. Well, so what are we gonna do? Like take a car seat base and a car seat into the Uber, and then take a you're not even allowed to bring that many things into most arenas. Like it's really hard to find workarounds. So that's definitely been one of the harder things. Her English is pretty good, so that hasn't been a problem. Because I was gone for so long, I don't have like a massive network of friends here. I have a few people that I stayed in touch with, some who even came to visit me in Asia. But a lot of the friends that I stayed in touch with aren't in this area anymore. They've moved to like Colorado or California or New York City, Seattle, Austin, Dallas, but they're not in the Midwest. And so it's not like I have this massive network of friends, or more specifically like young families that I can introduce her to. So that's definitely been a bit of a challenge. I don't think it's the hardest part. The hardest thing, man, the hardest thing is it's hard to say. There's been a series of challenges, and it's been just working through those, trying to take them one at a time, even though they never come one at a time, and just taking away.
Now, what are you doing for work in the U.S., and how does that compare to the work that you were doing when you were living abroad?
The cost of living here is significantly higher than the cost of living in Southeast Asia, like significantly higher. And then, as I mentioned, you need a car, right? So need health insurance. Housing is more expensive, and food actually seems to be more expensive. Like Western food in China maybe was more expensive than Western food in the Western world, when you like go out to eat and stuff. But then when you factor in like the tipping and a drink or two, and then debatably on like which city you're in or where you're going, like parking and stuff like that, like a night out is more expensive here. That doesn't necessarily answer the question, but it leads me to the next point. Like the cost of living is higher here, so I don't want to answer directly what I'm doing for work right now, but I work several part-time situations, and compared to Asia, in Asia, like I had learned how to speak basic Thai. I learned pretty good Mandarin, so if I went to a bar or whatever, on a Friday night, I could meet some affluent people, break the ice, build some rapport, and generate opportunity. And those might be part-time opportunities. They might be gig opportunities. They might be contract opportunities. They might be full-time opportunities. But I could generate opportunities that were significantly more lucrative, compared to the cost of living, than opportunities that exist here for me with my unique resume and background. I think that answers your question.
So you were much more of an entrepreneurial spirit in Asia than I think what you're saying is those opportunities are much less in the U.S. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, specifically the timing that my timing on coming back was good for a lot of reasons with like some of the things going on in Asia right now, but bad because of some of the things going on here. To be more specific, like the economy here, like what's going on with jobs here. A lot of people who were able to work from home took pay cuts. A lot of those companies are on like a hiring freeze. There's 40 million people looking for jobs now, or at least collecting unemployment. So yeah, it's unique.
You said earlier that there are some things about living in China or Southeast Asia that are better than living in the U.S. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll focus primarily on China infrastructure. It's the biggest, for sure. It's the biggest thing that when you're driving around Shenzhen, for example, you're on one of the freeways or expressways or whatever you want to call them, and you see like flower boxes on every bridge. You see beautiful plants, in the middle of the road between the two lines of traffic. And like the whole thing is landscape. It's like the whole expressway is like almost like a park, right? I mean, you can attest to that. And you come here to the Midwest, and it's almost like jumping in a time machine. Things are more spread out here, sure. Population densities are lower, but things also haven't been updated. You can really tell that like America was the biggest superpower, but something happened, man. And I certainly don't want to rag on America. Things in China, like, I went to Thailand for a year and a half and then went back to Shenzhen, and there were new skyscrapers, like multiple new like massive skyscrapers. In a year and a half, like they weren't there, and then they were there. Like the skyline changed, and it didn't change because like buildings were torn down. It changed because like new stuff was built, and I just don't see that here so much. Maybe I can only really talk about the Midwest. It's where I've been spending most of my time. But yeah, it's kind of weird. So infrastructure, and then people still use cash here. China's pretty much cashless, which there's certainly pros and cons to that. But you see like Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, and Google Pay now in a lot of places, but people don't typically use it as much as like the Chinese use like Alipay and WeChat Pay.
So life is a bit more convenient, is what you're saying, in Asia with infrastructure and payments.
Yeah, man, I was in Manhattan, right? And it's a pretty expensive place to live. And I was using a main US carrier cell phone provider, and I had a call drop, and I was like, what? How is my call dropping? I'm in Manhattan, like I'm using a US like a mainstream US carrier, like what? And like in China, I use China Mobile primarily, and dude, I always had data connectivity, and I don't remember calls dropping outside of like an occasional elevator or parking garage, right? So, just there's a lot of things like that, man. There's a lot of things that it just seems like things have been stagnant here, right?
Sure.
There hasn't been progression.
Well, I mean, I can attest to the same thing. I mean, certainly there's a lot more conveniences. Infrastructure is better in say China, but what you're giving up for conveniences is your freedoms. And so you just don't, you don't have access to the, freedom of information and freedom of speech. And then so on that note, with the protests going on and your wife being from China where protesting is illegal, how does she look at that, and how are the protests affecting life in Detroit, and what's happening with the protests in Detroit and Michigan, I guess.
Okay, so her opinion on it is it's kind of unique, right? So she says, in China, it was so easy for you to get a job. Food was so cheap. The cost of living was so low. Over here, everything's so expensive. It's hard to find work. And I was like, yeah, but we have freedom. And she's like, what does it matter if you can say, beep Trump or beep this politician? Nothing's going to change for you to change anything. So that's kind of her perspective on it. Things that she likes, though, is like the idea of if you buy property, like a piece of land, not property as like a thing, like property as in like land or a house, the fact that you own that outright, like forever, like that's yours, so that's cool. But then looking into it, if you buy a house in certain neighborhoods, like you can't put up a privacy fence, or you have to pull a permit to build a deck, or you can't have chickens, or so the land is yours, right? But you still can't do whatever you want on it in regards to like building up your house, or so she certainly likes that fact that it's like forever ownership and it goes to your kids, or you can will it to whomever if you were to pass away, or when you pass away. But that that's definitely something she likes.
And I guess really the last question I want to ask you is how is how is Detroit and Michigan faring with coronavirus?
Not
How is it?
good. Not good. Yeah.
How is it? How is it
Detroit got
affecting?
hit hard.
How is it affecting your life right now?
I mean, we were under lockdown for like 3.5 months in Michigan. And then things slowly reopened, and like the gyms were scheduled to open like June 24th or 25th or something like that. And I got email notifications, hey, the gym's opening up. And then like a day or two before, the governor backpedaled on that. And then like bars were open for a few days and they're closed down again. So I feel bad for those businesses that like followed. They got hurt by a massive lockdown, just being completely closed out of the blue. And then they followed the reopening procedures according to the new laws and restrictions and everything, and did all the training for their staff and built face shields into cashier counters and all these things that they did. And then, bam, closed again after just a few days. And then like in regards to what I was saying about like me not having a lot of like friends and stuff that I can introduce Susie to, or like hang out with, trying to go meet people when everyone's locked up and they're home. Like that's not really happening. So we see a lot of Americans taking to social media and just having incredibly unhealthy conversations with people, and just like being angry and meh.
So overall, are you happy you moved back to the U.S.?
Ooh, Jonathan, you have a lot of loaded questions tonight for me, buddy. My goodness. Yes, overall, I'm happy. Don't know how much detail I want to go into as to why. But what I will say is, we were really trying to go to Hong Kong to start our young family, and the way Hong Kong works is somebody born in Hong Kong to like maybe a foreign parent and a Chinese parent, right? Somebody born there would be issued a Hong Kong passport, and also in my case, my son would have been issued a Hong Kong passport and a U.S. passport. And a Hong Kong passport allows you to go into mainland China without restriction. And both those passports could be held for life. The way it worked in mainland China is the child could be issued both passports. It would take some time, and running the embassies and stuff. But when the child turned 18, they would have to pick one. And I didn't like that. So we were trying to go to Hong Kong and then our child was born in the middle of 2019, and I'm sure people can remember what was happening in Hong Kong in the middle of 2019. So in hindsight, I'm very happy that we chose to come here instead of Hong Kong.
Yeah, so you did what's best for the future of your kid.
What I think is best, let's see, kids grow up to be their own individuals, and the way things are going, who knows? But yeah, I'm still gonna stick to that. Yeah.
And long-term plans, you see yourself staying in Detroit for a long time, or in the U.S. for a long time?
Um, I mean, I'm trying to make the best of being here. It's not been the most ideal year for anyone anywhere in the world. As of now, we're staying here, but as of now, we don't have many choices, right? It's not like borders are open, and having a green card is great and all, but that doesn't mean that my wife can enter other countries with it, and it's not always easy to travel on a Chinese passport, and because of COVID and everything, and I didn't get my son a passport yet. I wasn't trying to take him to the post office and do all of that. And, for now we're staying here. It looks like a lot of countries aren't really going to be welcoming Americans for some time. So I don't think that even if I wanted to leave right now, that I could go. So
yeah. Wes, it was really good talking to you. Thanks for all the updates from USA. I hope everything stays. I hope you and your family stay happy and healthy. And yeah, it was great talking to you, buddy.
Yeah, it was good catching up with you too, man. I hope you avoid getting arrested. I know that you did 24 hours in immigration, and it's been almost a year since then. So way to go on a year of no arrest. And yeah, dude, it's always good to hear from you, and just stay safe, stay healthy, and yeah.
Sure. Take it easy, buddy. Bye. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you loved viewing it as much as we loved making it. Please subscribe to our channel to keep our adventures going. It's a simple and easy way for you to support these videos. Also, check out our Patreon page, where you can join the Eastbound and Up gang by becoming a one-time or monthly sponsor of our videos. Thanks again, and see you in our next adventure.